Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault 2, and we're back out here in my garage for a first impressions video. I want to tell you about a gun I took to the range today and was able to film the range footage for, and another one that I was not able to complete because I had a little bit of a technical malfunction, but I fixed it. But I want to talk about what happened and more specifically a problem with clone guns, especially in the world of HK, that I'm aware of and some people are not. And then I want to share with you a video idea and a video collaboration that I'll be doing in the near future with an attorney. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. But I also have to remind you that if you're watching this channel for the very first time, please know this is not my main channel. It's why it's the Texas Gun Vault 2. I've been getting a lot of comments recently of people making fun of me or berating me, saying that I'm very rambly, these aren't very good reviews, blah, blah, blah. This is not my review channel. This is my small channel where I just have an interaction with my biggest fans. And that's what this channel is and what it always will be. I do not want this channel to get big. It's not designed to be what the main channel is. It has a completely different philosophy. I film all these videos just on my phone. I don't use my nice vlogging camera like I do on the main channel. All right, so let's talk about the guns that I took to the range today. And the first gun was the Haze Custom Guns Cobra Series 2011. I recently showed you in an upcoming projects video this gun, and I just wanted to take a pistol to the range because they're a little bit easier to film and to write the scripts for and to edit the range footage. So sometimes the more involved videos like the silencers, I only want to do those once in a while. But the pistols, they're pretty straightforward. So I decided to take one of D's 2011 pistols to the range. He let me borrow this one and the Watchtower Apache. So this is the one I went with because it kind of has a Texas flair to it. It's made here in Texas, and it has that island barrel, and it's compensated. I really like the staccato, what was it, the XL or the XC that has this? I think it's the XL that has this, and I shot that really, really well. So my impressions on this pistol are very, very positive. So let me give you the basics first. From a function and accuracy standpoint, this is probably hands down the nicest 2011 I've ever shot. Okay, well, there is one issue with the function, but I will get to that. But when it comes to accuracy, I didn't think I would ever shoot a 2011 pistol better than I did that staccato. I think it's the XL, the one with the island barrel. This one beats it. This truly is a tack driver, and at 25 yards, I think it is the best group I have ever got from shooting from the bench. Unbelievable. Even when I shoot this gun fast, just amazing groups. This gun is it is incredible how accurate it is. Now let's talk about the function. Overall, I had no real issues with it. No failures to feed, failures to eject. All the ammunition that I ran through it ran flawlessly. But maybe this is more of a 2011 thing and not necessarily a Haze Custom Guns thing. If you ever handle one of these 2011s, something you may notice that's a little bit different than other pistols is the recoil spring is very light. So I barely have to use any energy to pull this slide back. It like runs on ball bearings, and I've always been curious about how this operates because you still have all the force of a 9mm, cartridge expelling its gases, and of course about for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as the round is going down range, we have an equal amount of force coming back into the pistol. And a lot of other pistols, for example, like this Beretta 92 FS Inox, it uses some of the spring energy and the strength of the spring to absorb that energy. So when you pull this back, you go, okay, I can feel the resistance. Even though the slide is moving very smooth, there's more resistance there. But when it comes to most 2011 pistols, you don't feel that. And I'm not really sure where that recoil energy goes. Obviously, it has to be absorbed somewhere because it feels good in your hand. It's not like you feel all the power of the 9mm coming back into your hand. But mechanically, I always feel like these guns are undersprung. And the function issue I had is when I topped off one of these magazines with, I think these things can take 22 rounds is what I counted. But if I load 20, 21, or 22 rounds in this magazine, when I load it and I pull the slide back and I let the slide go, this spring is not strong enough to pick up that first round because it's in that magazine really tight, and extract it from that magazine and feed it into the chamber. Once it gets down to about 19, it's fine. Now, when I run the gun, it doesn't seem to have an issue. But if I just manually rack the slide, and I will slingshot it, I will let it go with strength, it doesn't have enough power to load that first round. And once or twice, the round got caught on the feed ramp, and I just took my thumb on the back of the slide and pushed it forward, and then it loaded that round. And I think that's just because of the recoil spring in here. I know it's the recoil spring that's designed to be in it. It seems to work fine, but when the magazine is under a lot of tension or pressure, you might have some issues getting those rounds to go into the chamber. So that's the only function issue I had. But when it comes to how comfortable it is, the ergonomics, it's great. Very well balanced gun. I thought this stippling on the grip would be too aggressive, but honestly, it's perfect. And this thing is a tack driver. It might be the most accurate pistol I have ever shot. But now on the flip side, kind of what I was talking about yesterday, when it comes to its form, the way it looks, I do not like the way this pistol looks. It's simply too blocky. Sometimes 2011 companies get a little bit too ornate. It can go in the opposite direction where it's too flashy. For me, a gun has to be balanced. Like everything in life, it has to be balanced. You know, a little story about me. I think I've mentioned this in the past. I have never been drunk in my life, but I do drink because I believe that you should be able to drink in balance. Meaning if I have one or two drinks at dinner, that's all I need. I enjoyed the taste. I enjoyed the experience. I enjoy a nice whiskey from time to time or a tequila or whatever, but I never go into excess. So everything is within balance. And the aesthetics of this gun, I think, are out of balance. To me, it's too utilitarian looking. Now, I know some people have told me in my 2011 videos that they like this boxy look, but for me, there's a lot of sharp edges here. It doesn't look as refined. I mean, it's very well finished, and I don't see any machine marks. And this is more of just a qualitative personal opinion. I just kind of feel like this is just too blocky. It's too much of one color, and it's not as pretty as other 2011s. In fact, I've been trying to do all of my thumbnails at the range. I'm sure you've noticed that. But this is one I'm going to have to do probably here at the house, here on the workbench, because it's simply too dark, and at the range, it just blends in with the background. And I kind of wish there was more contrast in that. So none of that affects the performance of the gun, but I do feel if you're going to spend this type of money on a pistol, you need to like the way the gun looks. Now, for me, might not be my cup of tea, but for you and for the owner of this pistol, D, it might be a perfect. As I said, that is just a personal opinion, but this gun is going to get really high marks, amazing marks, because I've never shot a gun this well before. This was a truly pleasurable experience and one that kind of surprised me. So that's my first impressions on the Haze Custom Guns Cobra Series 2011 pistol. All right, so now let's talk about the other gun I took to the range today. And that is going to be one that I've been looking forward to reviewing. And this one is on loan to the channel from my friend Jack. And this is an Hk53 clone. And now this is made by Vector Arms. Now when he lent this to the channel, and by the way, I have to give him once again a huge shout out because he donates his time and also did all like the paperwork so I can borrow this. We had a flashlight on the side, which I took off because I wanted to run this in the review both suppressed and unsuppressed. And this has a flash hider on it, and that Surefire was like right next to the muzzle device. I'm pretty sure he only runs this thing suppressed. So I took that off and I mounted a red dot to this. I was like, okay, he recommended running this with a red dot. So we had this clamp rail on it right here. And so I mounted a red dot to it. I took it to the range. And before I started filming any footage with it, I always try to shoot a few rounds through it. Number one, I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was going to be getting into. What does the gun really shoot like before I do that first, magazine through it? Really, I only do about 5 rounds. But after 1 or 2 rounds, I noticed that the red dot was like canted to the side. And that's because the claw mount that goes onto this receiver had tilted. And so I didn't have the size Allen wrenches to adjust these at the top to loosen up and fix it. So I couldn't film the rest of the range report. So I had to go back to the range and do that later. But I got back here to the garage and I was trying to adjust this. I loosened these up. And the way that these mounts work is they have like these little teeth. And essentially like on the receiver here, let me see if I can show you. Yeah, it's up here. So we have these little parts of the receiver that stick out, and the claw essentially has these teeth that go under it, and you tighten them down, and it holds the rail onto the top. Now, I've heard of people having issues with these clones because those receivers and these receivers might not be in spec. And I think this one's not 100% in spec because I realized, and when I looked down the side and I really tried to install this, one side of these claws is barely, and I mean barely, hanging on by its, fingernails on one of these ledges. The other one was fine, and I couldn't get it balanced. And so I've never had a problem with any of these claw mounts on real HKs, but I have on the clones. And even the clone Special Weapons 5 I had bigger ledges on here. So it slipped, and it looks like it slipped and moved around in the past. There was a little bit of wear on the finish, but I tried to fix it a little bit up here. I refinished it, just those little spots, making it look pretty good. But I think either this claw mount is out of spec, which I don't think it is. I'm sure this would probably fit a real HK93. I think this receiver is a little bit out of spec. And Vector was not known for having everything just right. It's a U.S. company, or was a U.S. company. And so I'm probably going to have to review this without a red dot. So I'm just going to run this with the iron sights. But yeah, I tried to review this, but was unable to. But I think I got everything ready to go back and hopefully have a good time with this thing. So I guess Jack will see this. I won't tell him until he sees this video, and he can tell me what he thinks and if he's had any issues. But I didn't adjust this mount. It was already on here, and as I said, after my first few rounds, it had already like slipped to one side. And then when I got it here, I could get it where it was level, and I could screw it down. But then if I looked kind of down the side, it was like barely hanging on. It was not enough where I felt comfortable taking it back to the range. I really felt like under recoil, it's going to come off again. So we're just going to run this with iron sights. Okay, so that's kind of my first impressions. One was a successful range trip, and one was not. And often when I take guns to the range, I'll have these issues. So I really wanted to get the footage on this one. But now let's talk about the video that I want to make in the, I guess, the near future, and see what you guys think. Because my wife works for an estate planning attorney. And they're a small firm, but they mainly do trusts and wills. And one of the attorneys has, he's very knowledgeable in gun trusts. And he's kind of started a side business of gun trusts and estate planning for firearms. And it's quite interesting, and some people, I think the gun trust route is a good idea, especially when it comes to Title II firearms, NFA weapons, and so forth. And he wanted to kind of sponsor a video and say, hey, could we do a video where we talk about this? And I said, that's a really good idea, because there's a lot of videos out there about gun trusts, but I want to bring people information that might be different than what they're getting. Because I told the attorney that when it comes to gun trusts, what you see on websites and other attorneys that sell gun trusts is it's all the information on the front end, meaning, okay, you want to buy a silencer, you get a gun trust, you do this, and you can get your silencer, and that's it. But nobody really talks about the maintenance of that trust, meaning over time, what's the proper procedure when it comes to beneficiaries? What if you want to adjust the trust or amend the trust where essentially it can exist in perpetuity? Actually, he said in Texas, a trust can only exist for 300 years. I didn't know that, but that's kind of interesting. But for example, I guess if you have a trust and you're the trustee and you have a beneficiary, if you pass away, your beneficiary would get the trust, but the trust gets dissolved. But the question I had was, could you essentially, because some of these are revocable trusts, meaning you can change things, what if over time you as the trustee want to step down, you can make the beneficiary the trustee and add a different beneficiary, essentially your grandson or whatever. So essentially this trust can exist in perpetuity. What's the procedure? What's the legalities of that? Is that a good idea? I also wanted to ask about putting Title I firearms in a gun trust. What's the pros and cons? I mean, a lot of these things I kind of know, but because as they say, actually talking about law, you're not supposed to ask a question in the court of law that you don't know the answer to, because you don't want to be thrown off your game. You should already know what the answer to the question is. A lot of this stuff I already knew. But then I mentioned to him, there's one aspect of gun trusts that nobody talks about, and that is the eventual end of the gun trust, meaning what happens when you die. I mean, a lot of people, they get those single shot trusts from a silencer shop, or they have a gun trust made just so they can acquire firearms. But what happens when you want to either dispose of a firearm, meaning to sell it, maybe you're still alive, or what happens if you die unexpectedly, or you just die and the trust exists? What are the forms you need to know? What are the roles of the executor? What do you need to do to remain legal with these firearms? What can the beneficiaries do? And essentially the end process. And he made a very good point. He said that the whole idea of gun trusts is relatively new. And there haven't been, since their inception, I don't know how long ago. I don't know what the history of gun trusts are. I'm sure they're a while, but most people today that are getting them have gotten them in the past 10 years. Most people that have them probably have not passed on. So there hasn't been this big wave of people that are, the trustees of a trust that die. So maybe a lot of people have not had to deal with this. So that's why we don't see content like this. Like, oh my gosh, my uncle passed away, and he had this trust. I'm a beneficiary, but I don't understand the language. I don't know what forms to do. What can the executor do? Can I take possession of the items or not? You don't know. And so I want to sit down and create a video that talks about the history of trusts. Are trusts right for you? What can you do? And then most importantly, what happens at the end of the trust? Because nobody talks about that. And there's not a lot of good information about that. And then, of course, because he's sponsoring it, his gun trusts are good. I think he said in pretty much all states, but there's some states you don't want to have a gun trust in because of, like California, because you can't own NFA items. There's no real advantage to having one there. But in other states, there are advantages. And he even talks about how in the state of Texas, when it comes to property management, for example, in Texas, 2 of your firearms, if you don't have a trust, are protected against lawsuits. So they can't take 2 of your firearms away in a lawsuit no matter what, if somebody sues you. But if you set up your trust in a certain way, you can have asset protection that removes them from being able to be seized in a lawsuit. And I thought that was really fascinating. And if you do your gun trust in Texas and incorporate that trust in Texas, you are protected by that regardless of where you live. So I thought that was really interesting. So is that a video you guys would be interested in, especially if you have a trust and you haven't thought ahead about the end of the trust, because as much as we don't want to think about it, we all have our date with destiny, if you know what I mean. And so you want to make sure that the people that you would leave your firearms to or want to be in control of your firearms can have the right information, the right forms, or while you're still alive, you're able to manage the assets of that trust in a way that you desire. You know, as I said, maybe keeping that trust going in perpetuity or what it is. So that's a video I want to make. We had a meeting today about what the structure of the video would be. I have to kind of create like a proposal for it, and then we're going to try to film it. And that's going to be a big editing job because we're going to try to do 2 cameras where one is going to be on us talking and one will be kind of a close-up of him. I've never done anything like that before, and we'll have to test my editing skills. So tell me your thoughts about that in the comment section below. And tell me what you think about my issues with the HK clone and the Haze Custom Guns 2011. So if you watched to the end of this video, the word of the day is trust. Trust is the word of the day because that's going to be a video topic that I will be making in the future for the main channel. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you as always for joining me here in the garage. I love these discussions. And by the way, I'm looking at maybe doing some live streams again. I have to test my internet connection because the only reason I don't do live streams anymore is our internet connection here sucks. So it cannot seem to support live streaming, but I want to see if I can get into those again. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.